Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Premanani Hari Hari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Wow. 57?
Yeah, 67 verse.
Huh?
67. 67.
67, the last verse of the 9th canto. Auspicious, huh? This meeting being live streamed. Got it. Okay, this is 9th canto, chapter 24, text 67. This is the last verse of the 9th canto. Pritya sa vai gunabaram chapayam kurunam amrita samuta kalina yudi bhupa shamba drisya viduya vijaye jayam udvigasya prachodvaya cha param samagat swadama tritya savoy gurubaram chapayam kurunam antat samutta kalina yudibu pachamba drisya viduya vijaye jayam udvigasya prasyodhavaya chaparam samagat swadama Pritya savoy gunabaram chapayam kurunam antat samutta kalina yudibupacharva chamba Tristya viduya vijaye jayam udvigasya prachodavaya chaparam samagat swadama
Anta samu kalina yudibu pachambaha drishya viduya vijaye jayam udvighosya prosyodhavaya chaparam samagat swadhama.
Anyone else? I'm trying to. Pritya
Vidya
on the earth.
on the earth.
Sa
Saha
he, Lord Krishna.
He, Lord Krishna.
Vai
Vai
indeed.
indeed.
Gunabaram,
Gunavaram,
a great burden.
a great burden.
Chapayan,
Swayam,
completely finishing.
finishing.
Kadunam,
Gunam,
of the personalities born in the Kuru dynasty.
the personality for the Kuru.
Antak Samutta Kalina,
Anta Samuta Karina.
by creating enmity between the brothers by disagreement. Yudi, in the battle of Kurukshetra, Bhupacharva, all the demoniac kings, Drishtya, by his glance, Viduya, cleansing their sinful activities, Vijaye, in victory, Jayam, victory, Udvigasya, declaring the victory for Arjuna, Pratsya, giving instructions, Udavaya, unto Udava, Cha, also, Param, transcendental, Samagat, returned, Swadharma, to his own abode. One minute here. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Translation. Thereafter, Lord Krishna created a misunderstanding between family members just to diminish the burden of the world. Simply by his glance, he annihilated all the demoniac kings on the battlefield of Kurukshetra and declared victory for Arjuna. Finally, he instructed Uddhava about transcendental life and devotion, and then returned to his abode in his original form. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Paritanaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam. The mission of Lord Krishna was performed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, for by the Lord's mercy, Arjuna was victorious due to being a great devotee, whereas the others were killed simply by the Lord's glance, which cleansed them of all sinful activities and enabled them to attain sarupya. Finally, Lord Krishna instructed Uddhava about the transcendental life of devotional service, and then in the course of time, he returned to his abode. The Lord's instructions in the form of Bhagavad Gita are full of jnana and vairagya, knowledge and renunciation. In the human form, one must learn these two things, how to become detached from the material world and how to acquire full knowledge in spiritual life. This is the Lord's mission, Paritanaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam. After executing his complete mission, the Lord returned to his home, Goloka Vrindavan. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 9th canto, 24th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, completed in Bhubaneswar, India, on the occasion of establishing Krishna Balaram Temple. End of the 9th canto. Om Gana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaksuramilitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sadrajatam Sahagana Raghunath Tandritam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvisesha Sunyavari Paschatya Desatarane. Vanchakapa Turubhyas Cha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnave Vyo Namaha. Namo Mahavadanaye Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gaura Tushe Namaha Panchatatmakam Krishna Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shaktikam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Danit Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Yeah, so this is very interesting. You see, the Bhagavatam is not exactly a chronological history, timeline, because here it's predicting all kinds of things that are going to happen in even the 11th canto. It doesn't really mention Krishna's appearance in Vrindavan and all in this verse. But Krishna was the whole getting the world ready for his actual appearance, came in so many different incarnations, but always the same mission is there, Prachanaya Sadhanam, Vinashaya Chaduskatam, which is the same thing actually, from different angles. He annihilates the miscreants and gives pleasure to the devotees, because the miscreants like Kamsa was for sure one, Hiranyakashipu, they especially harassed the devotees and the pious people, and the brahmanas, made it illegal to do yajna and things like that, like we find now in some places. So finally Krishna has to come. So it mentions here that the earth was overburdened by all these demons, because what happened was the demigods had become very powerful and driven the demons out of their abodes. So a lot of the demons took birth on earth where they could dominate, they could act like demons. They became powerful kings and they could rule, but they were not necessarily Kshatriyas. A Kshatriya, real Kshatriya is, meant to protect and help the innocent and the weak people, protect the brahmanas and cows and everybody, the Vaishyas, the women, the children, the old people. The Kshatriya make sure everything is safe for them, but some people have Kshatriya, character. They're not character, but powers or abilities, but not Kshatriya. They're not guided by brahmanas. So they become demoniac kings, exploiting the people. Now we have a lot of that, exploiting the environment, exploiting people in so many ways, and not caring. I've heard it, I guess, most of my life, that, we'll find a way to move people to other planets, if this one gets too messed up to me. But this planet is perfectly designed for human bodies. Other planets may be designed for different kinds of bodies, but human bodies are not going to make it there. And they don't, the idea that it could change the environment by atomic bombs or something is quite ludicrous. And we just got news that NASA is releasing all their documents about extraterrestrial beings and things like that, aliens that have come to Earth. So they're admitting. Of course, in the Bhagavatam, Sadhguru Prabhu wrote about that, but we had, there's so many information of other planets and other types of people, demigods and beyond, and even much higher planets, Janaloka, Maharloka, Tapaloka, people like the four Kumaras, like that, and all the demigods, and then the Rakshasas, and we have so much information. The scientists have always been saying there's no evidence of life as we know it, but there is life as we don't know it. And they know that, but they tried to write it off as science fiction or just something, for whatever reason. But now they've had too many, cases of spotting different things. So they're admitting. So that does fit in line with our teachings. It's just another thing that make people maybe appreciate the Bhagavatam. Or many of these Kurus and all that, they came from heavenly planets, they came from Rakshasa planets, and so it's here interesting how he talks about the Battle of Kurukshetra, which comes much later, because Krishna was there as an adult, but the 10th canto starts out with the pregnancy of Devaki and then the appearance of Krishna and all the childhood pastimes and killing Kamsa. It's quite a long time before he's 125 years old at the Battle of Kurukshetra. And he's here in the Bhagavatam is telling you ahead of time. Many times Bhagavatam is a very amazing book, and it talks about, Sukadeva Goswami, I will be describing later this, and I described previously that. But it's not in a timeline. In the first canto, we get a list of incarnations. In the second canto, we get again more detail. And things go back, and go back before what was, and then we get descriptions of the beginning of the universe. And, when Lord Brahma, that comes up many times. It's quite amazing, and how Lord Brahma prayed for creative power. Mainly he prayed for humility, that he wouldn't become proud. He knew what he was going to do. He knew that actually Krishna was a doer. And he was praying that he wouldn't get bewildered and think, I'm doing all this. This is very dangerous. And most people are in this, Karanam Guna Sangasya, that they think I'm the doer. Although everything's being carried out by the modes of nature. But I think I am the doer, and that's a vimuda, Krishna said. Especially a stupid person that thinks I'm the doer. No, Krishna's doing everything. The modes of nature are doing it, but they're under Krishna's direction. So the Bhagavatam explains all that. We were hearing the other day in Pradananda Swami how, how can Krishna say this is the greatest knowledge? He says that in the 7th canto, right? Or no, 9th canto is the king of knowledge. And later he says, this is even better, what I told you before. It's just about the modes of nature. So we might think, well, modes of nature, that's, how does that have to do with going back to Godhead? We have to know how the modes of nature are working and how Krishna is behind them. So we predict here, and then he even predicts, how he's going to speak to Uddhava. And that's the 11th canto, which is a quite very big section, the Uddhava Gita, where Krishna is speaking so many things to Uddhava. It's very important. I remember when I was first the devotees, and I was reading Nectar Devotion, and it had so many references to the 11th canto. So I was really thinking, well, I'd like to read that 11th canto, because everything was getting backed up by something. So finally we got the 11th canto. And now we even have commentaries, but most of the commentaries of the acharyas are all put in the purports of the Bhaktivedanta BBT Srimad Bhagavatam commentary or devotees were writing, because they were just collecting commentaries from the acharyas. So we have this, amazing thing. Uddhava was highly educated, disciple of Brihaspati, and Krishna's one of Krishna's main ministers, advisors, and when Krishna was speaking to him, he had all as much time as he wanted. When he was speaking to Arjuna, the Bhagavad Gita, he didn't have much time. Prabhupada says things like half hour, 1 hour, pretty good to speak the whole Bhagavad Gita in 1 hour even, but Krishna can talk faster than we can, I used to wonder how that could be. Then there was one woman in Nigeria, and she had memorized the whole Bhagavad Gita, and she would come to the Hindu temple, I don't know, every day or once a week, and recite the Bhagavad Gita. And I heard her, and she was so fast, and I just couldn't catch up, But she was clearly pronouncing all the Sanskrit. So Krishna could do that, and Arjuna could catch it, because Krishna gave him the ability to understand, because he's a devotee as well as Krishna's friend, and because he's not envious. The friend is not envious of his friend. That's probably one of the main definitions of a friend. So that's what he tells him here. Because you're not envious, because you're a devotee, because you're my friend, I can give you this knowledge. Can't give it to envious people, but we give it to everybody, because envious people won't read it. They won't take it even if we offer, right? We find that. But if anyone has the slightest bit of humility, curiosity, then they qualify as devotee. That's what Krishna says. Anyone who teaches this knowledge to the devotees, they're very dear to me. So that doesn't just mean you have to find people who are chanting, every day, 16 rounds, following 4 living principles, going to Mangalarti, then you wouldn't have a very big audience in most parts of the world. But anybody who's not envious, who's willing to hear anything, has any kind of curiosity. What is this all about? What am I doing here? Why am I here? Anyone who's thinking, we have to try to provoke that kind of thinking in them. So the Bhagavatam is, really amazing. I was reading one devotee that he sells a lot of Bhagavatam sets, and the other day the priest of the one temple from the Sri Sampradaya, he was friendly with them, and the priest was, the real Brahmana, and he bought Prabhupada's books. He bought all the Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. So that's, a lot of people say we're so much different than the Sri Sampradaya, people that are not educated in the Sri Sampradaya. But this man's obviously very educated. He's a priest of the temple, and he could understand Prabhupada's position. So he wants to learn about Krishna. He's not worried about, where, if it's this group or that group or, this, we get all these people, I'm Muslim, I'm Christian, I don't believe it. They don't understand there's only one God. He has many, many names, many incarnations for different times and places, and from the very beginning of creation and all the different species. We're only hearing, in the Bhagavatam, we hear about the main ones over and over again. In the first canto, we get a quick list, and in the second canto, get some, a little bit of the activities of the different incarnations. And after that, we get the details of different, third canto is Kapila Muni, and then we get all the different incarnations and details of how they lived, how they appeared, where's their family, what they taught, or what they killed, or what, what kind of work they did. It's very, purifying. So we may not understand Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not possible actually to really know Krishna. And what we can know is inconceivable, achintya beta tattva. Like Krishna says, Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina matstani sarva bhutani matstani chupadadaya. Everything is resting on me, but I'm in everything, but everything is not in me. It's achintya beta tattva. And Krishna explains. And then Lord Chaitanya, after studying and taking out different essential things from the four sampradayas, then he summarized everything in this achintya beta tattva. Simultaneously, inconceivably, the same and not the same. So we get many mundane comparisons of that, but this is essential for understanding Krishna. But a scientist will say, well, that you say that because you don't know, but actually because we do know. We know that Krishna is beyond anybody's mind and any kind of, categorizing and weighing and measuring and all these things, which scientists want to think that they can measure and know everything. And then the things that they can't know, they just give it some name. Dark holes, quarks, synchronisms. They have a lot of names for the things in the universe that they cannot figure out. Where it's just darkness or something. Because they don't know. Krishna not showing. He won't let them see. So they say because they for sure they don't know, then that puts them in a superior position to the common people. But we don't accept that. So we like to read the Bhagavatam. Now here we're going to move into the 10th canto. In our Japanese class, they just started the 10th canto also. So, the whole thing has been getting ready for Krishna. And this is another thing we have to remember when we're preaching, especially that Prabhupada, that normally one is supposed to fully realize the whole Bhagavatam before he can read the 10th canto, because it's, intimate pastimes. But Prabhupada wanted, to introduce Krishna, the personality of Godhead. So he was empowered to produce this amazing book, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada made that book very early. And he put, it's not like the Bhagavatam, he had already done the first canto, and he had translated already, I think, second canto, part of third canto. And with the standard, Sanskrit, word for word, all that. But in the Krishna book, he didn't do that. He didn't put slokas exactly. He sometimes gave a translation. But he gave translation of the 10th canto, but he weaved in full realizations of the first 9 cantos, so that anybody could read the Krishna book and get purified by it, not get, bewildered and get misunderstanding Krishna, because Prabhupada put in this complete understanding of who is Krishna and how great is Krishna. This is the most amazing literature. Prabhupada himself just glorified that book. There's many instances where he called devotees. One was when in South America somewhere, he called Hridayananda, and he came running, and Prabhupada was peacefully sitting there reading the Krishna book. And he said, "Have you read this book?" And he said, "It's very good, isn't it?" Prabhupada said that. And I went in the garden in LA. Prabhupada used to sit there every night, and they would let, everybody get at least one time come in. And he would just read Krishna book. Somebody would be reading to him. I saw him, we could sit on the second floor and we could see down into the garden in the afternoon, maybe 5 o'clock or something. And he would be with his servant, and the servant was just reading Krishna book to him. About just the 2 of them. Then in the evening, at least the time I went, he was just reading Krishna book and just relishing it. And I guess he was doing that most nights. And we weren't there every night. It might be, wasn't always recordings. If he had guests, of course, he'd talk different things. But if there was nothing special, he would just relish reading this Krishna book. He would read it himself. Devotees were surprised. Authors don't normally read their own book. And sometimes Prabhupada, right after the class, in the Bhagavatam class, no, I would never do this. He would go and listen to it. And he would say, "I want to see what Krishna said." So he was just, Krishna was using him in every other way, like Krishna used everybody in the Bhagavatam. So finishing the 9th canto means, ready for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's the 10th canto, which is the biggest canto, I guess, the most verses. And we all relish it. And we've distributed it in huge numbers. It was the first big book that we ever distributed. They had the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, they had Nectar Devotion, but nobody was really distributing it except maybe guests come to the temple or something. I remember one time I was very new, and I was at the temple alone, and some guests came. So I didn't know anything. So I said, "Well, we have these books, and because the devotees were always saying, Prabhupada wants to sell these books, Prabhupada wants to distribute books. And they weren't doing it. And I think this person bought the books. And then when the temple president came, I said, "Can I go and try to sell books?" Because one devotee was doing it. And he said, no, you can't do it. Only he can do it. He's senior, But then somehow or other, devotees started selling the Krishna book, and the news spread. And then everybody started. And I remember going door to door with that huge book with 64 pictures and just showing people the pictures, because they hadn't read the book practically. And just saying these are windows to the spiritual world. This was door to door, so we were in their house. And people were just saying, "How much is it?" So for years and years, they were selling so many Krishna books, made Krishna very famous. And I'm sure it made a lot of devotees also. So we should still be thinking that it's such an important book, such nectar. And children can read it. Sanskrit scholars can read it and are impressed with it. Any kind of person can read it. And It's because it's Krishna and he's in the heart of everyone, everyone will get what Krishna wants them to get from it. So we're very fortunate to have this Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada, we say, if we study, what Prabhupada went through to translate it and get it published and inspiring devotees to distribute it. If we could give even, a little bit of that much effort to hearing and chanting the Bhagavatam, trying to distribute it, trying to present it to more and more people, we'll be very, very happy. And Krishna will be very happy. So I don't see the clock exactly, but it looks like time, right? 8 o'clock. So any comment or question until they blow the shank? Welcome. Anyone? Yes, sir. Quick.
So here, Maharaj, we're hearing the whole, kings and different in this canto. I guess what is the importance of hearing all these names? Especially this ninth canto has so many
Dynasties,
families and this person, that person.
Well, that's a good question. It's Krishna's family tree. Somehow or other, all these dynasties and all these, they were all leading up to finally Krishna. And that's somehow why it's there. Like my mother was really interested in the family tree, getting back to the ancestors and that they came on the Mayflower or something, some sort of prestige in that. But so it's Krishna's dynasty, Krishna's, family. And so they're all very special people because they were all leading up to the appearance of Krishna and all Krishna's associates, because Krishna, before he came and he sent the demigods and all kinds of others to come and take up different positions in the different dynasties and Kurus and, Vrajbasis and, his parents, Devaki, and also Nanda and Yasoda. So all these people, somehow connected to Krishna. And that's why. We might wonder when we're first reading it, what is this all leading up to? But it leads up to Krishna's appearance, which is very, very auspicious. So, that's for royal families and stuff. They like to know that. Even for thoroughbred dogs or horses, they have, they'll show you the long list of their ancestors, where this dog came from, long list of champions. And even bulls, so like that. Hare Krishna. So anyone else? These people didn't hear, they just came in. Huh?
So you were just mentioning how Prabhupada so much liked to hear this Krishna book, read the Krishna book. And I know for myself, and maybe for a lot of the devotees also, sometimes we feel a little hesitant to present Krishna directly. Here's Krishna. It's Krishna book. So what would you say about that?
Well, personally, it's the first book I distributed, and it was so ecstatic. And like I said, we just show these are pictures of the spiritual world, and people would like it. Then, then the next wave was, just showing them everybody knew George Harrison was into it. And then they just Krishna, yeah, George Harrison's name. How much is it? And then in Japan, It was also the only big book we had. And we distributed so many, and people were going Krishna, Krishna all over the place. Because it just had this big Krishna. So they get purified. Very nice. Jai. Ishi Radha. Whoever it is. Murlidhar. Ki Jai.
Thank you, Maharaj. Great class.
Thank you. Hope to see you sometime. This is Adi, right?
This is Ananda.
Huh?
Adi was here. Adi left. He needs to move the car.
What?
Adi left, but he was in class earlier.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Where is he?
He's at the kitchen.
Okay. Haribol. Thank you.
Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful Saturday. Haribo.